Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today it's all about Gondor and how we're going to build up that team to compete, especially for that chapter 3 of the raid. But there are a couple of things that we're going to have to consider before we have a look at this team. Now, first of all, stating the obvious is that there are 3 marquee characters in this team. So most players are going to have to deal with the main 3 of this team being 3 stars for probably around about 3 months. If we're lucky, we might be able to farm them by Christmas time. You never know. But in the meantime, they're going to be 3-star. They're not going to be at their very best, but we can do a lot with this team to try and get them to where we need them to be to start putting some decent scores on the board. The second thing that we're going to consider is what we learnt from chapter 3 is that you really need to bump that difficulty level up to level 3 in order to start scoring some decent points. Running this team, even if you do put some gear on them, there's no point putting them at levels 1 and 2. You're probably still not going to max them, whereas in a few rounds in difficulty 3, you're going to go past that 300,000 point. But what we're going to need to do to make sure that they survive is get those gear levels up. So you really want to get them to gear 7, gear 8 before you're going to start seeing those results. Getting the levels up to level 60 as fast as you can. I know that there is a bit of a bottleneck there, but try and work your way up. Even if you're doing level 40 for everyone, level 50, then level 60. Just try and do something to get those levels higher to keep them in the battle a little bit longer. When it comes to their abilities, I'm going to start out by pointing out what you need to do for chapter 3 specifically. Then we can talk about if you want to come back and do some other stuff to make them effective in other areas of the game, you'll be able to do that. But our main focus here is going to be on chapter 3 because that's exactly what the devs have said that this team is meant for. So we're going to kick it off with Denethor and his leadership ability. Now, the first thing that you're going to notice is that this is all about their block chance. And in chapter 3, every time you block, you're going to get a ton of points put on this team, especially on difficulty 3. So this leadership ability, Gondor squad members gain 3% block chance for each living Gondor squad member. That's just at level 1. You're going to want to max this out if you possibly can, because the more Gondor squad members, so if you've got all 5 in there, it's a 50-50 chance that you're going to block every incoming attack, and they can attack so quickly. So this is very, very important that you're going to want to run 5 Gondor squad members for this team. But the big bottleneck that you are going to face with just this leadership ability is when you get to level 5, you're going to start needing those green ability mats to upgrade those last 2. So if you are a free-to-play player, just be aware that when you build this team, you're probably only going to be running at 25% chance to block when you're building this team. If you're not going to be spending real-world money, the only place that you can get those green ability mats is in the raid store. You're going to have to wait until you're earning those mithril tokens to be able to buy them. So it could be a long time before you're able to max out this ability. But if you do want to run Gondor, definitely make sure you get this up to that level 4 because you want as much chance as humanly possible to be blocking, because that's the bulk of how you're going to score points for this team. As for Denethor's other abilities here, his basic, this does grant provoke to the Gondor member with the highest health, which is probably going to be Boromir. As far as the provoke stack that you're going to be able to put on someone here, that is going to be able to remove the marked bane that you will get from the orcs. However, they'll just put it on someone else. That doesn't really seem to be a huge part of how you overcome this raid. So if you're just looking to build this team for the raid, you don't really need to invest in this whatsoever. But if you are going to run this team in somewhere like the arena, then you're definitely going to be coming back and eventually building this all the way up to level 6 to always grant that provoke stack. Provoke is one of the most annoying things that you can possibly come up against, especially in the arena. So if you want to annoy your opponents, you definitely want to be able to always grant that provoke stack. For his first special ability, this is definitely one that you can invest in for the raid. Number one, he's going to grant those regeneration stacks. Now, regeneration is a form of healing, and healing is another way that you can get points. Given that this team really does lack a healer, this is the only type of healing that you're going to get for this team, so very important to get as much as humanly possible out of it. The other thing that this ability does is call both Boromir and the ally that has the most amount of Banes on them to assist. This can help you kill some of those orcs, reduce those captured stacks that you might have on your characters, but this is also another thing that could make them quite viable in Chapter 1 of the raid, because when you've got that bomber, you're going to be able to call 2 assists on that bomber to put more of those stacks of Don't Rush Me on him at once, and hopefully get him to drop that bomb on his own team. So this could be useful in more than one area of the game. Definitely invest in this one as heavily as you can. For his second special ability, this is another one that has been custom built for this chapter of the raid, and you're going to want to at least get this up to level 4, but I would also be encouraging you to get this all the way up to level 6 when you can. The reason for this, first of all, he's going to inflict stun on the target enemy. He's also going to be dispelling boons from all enemies. Now that includes their unbreakable stack, which is one thing that stops you from killing them quickly. At level 4, you're able to dispel 2 boons on all enemies, which could be handy, especially for taunts and things like that. It just helps you really even the playing field and try and knock a few of those orcs out quickly if you can. The downside to this is Denethor is going to have to last 3 rounds before he can even use this ability, and given how quickly this round can end, he's probably only going to get 1 chance at it. So before you go and level up 5 and 6 for this ability, I would do a bit of testing and see if you're even going to last long enough to be able to apply that unbreakable to all of your team, because you may not have very many left by the time he's able to apply that unbreakable to them. On top of that, Denethor is pretty slow as well, so even getting him to survive those 3 rounds to be able to use this move may not be something that can happen, so be careful investing in this one straight away until you know that he's going to be able to use this ability to start with. For his passive ability here, you do want to try and max this one out if you can, because you're going to get those regeneration stacks on the most wounded Gondor member. Again, they don't have a good healing mechanic to this team, so that's as much as you're going to get to try and build that health back up again. It'll also give you 15% focus as a bonus, and that's just going to help you apply those stuns a little bit better, so it could come in handy. But now we're going to move on to Boromir. And in terms of the raid, there's really only one thing that you need to invest in for Boromir, and that is his passive ability. This is going to give him an extra 15% block chance on top of the leadership ability of Denethor, so you really want to make sure that he's blocking as much as possible. He's also going to be dropping 2 stacks of regeneration on characters the first time they drop below 50% health. There's also some synergy in there with Faramir, but that's probably not going to change too much for the raid itself. But other areas of the game, obviously him and Faramir are going to work really well together, so definitely max this one out. In terms of his other abilities, his basic is mainly to do with damage. Yes, you can inflict weak in there as well, and you'll always inflict that at level 2. So again, not so important for the raid, but if you're going to build him up for other areas, pour more into this later on. Definitely a good option there. For his first special ability, You want to make sure that you do get this up to at least level 3 to start with, because that's going to allow him to gain fortitude for 1 turn, which is a 50% increase on his resistance, meaning that he's not going to be getting as many Banes put on him, which is always going to help you out in this chapter of the raid, because there are so many Banes being thrown at the team. This also does give you the taunt, which will remove marked from one of the other members of the team. That's a level 1 thing. Everything after level 3 is just going to be extra damage. Probably not going to score you any bonuses for the raid, but if you're going to use this somewhere in the arena or anywhere else like that, definitely come back and you want to build this one up as much as you can, because he's going to be a pretty decent damage dealer. For the second special ability, this is his big AoE, and yes, you can knock the orcs out and try and reduce some of those extra stacks of captured in the raid, but if you have played this chapter of the raid, you'll know that killing the orcs is not really something you're going to do all that frequently. So for the raid, it's not going to make any difference. For all other areas of the raid, this is definitely going to be a great ability. So make sure you're going to come back and put more into this one once you've got those extra resources available. Next, we're going to move on to Faramir. And the first thing that I want to bring up about him is more to do with his function in the team rather than the abilities, because most of his abilities aren't really going to get you any points in this raid. However, his speed is 165. Now, any character that has 164 or higher for difficulty level 3 will take a turn before the opposition. So that means that having Faramir in the team guarantees it before anyone does anything in this chapter, you'll put 18,000 points on the board. And this is the main thing that he's really going to bring to the team, because his kit is all about being under stealth. So if we even start with his basic ability, while he's in stealth, he's going to be building up extra damage. This probably won't help you much in chapter 3 of the raid, but what you do want to be doing, if you're going to be using him anywhere else in the game, you will be coming back and building this all the way up to level 6, because he does have an assist mechanic that we'll get to a little bit later. For his first special ability, when you get this one to level 2, he can inflict slow. Now, anytime that you can slow your opposition down, especially in chapter 3, they are so fast, so trying to slow them down, it's going to get you more points. I don't really think you need to take this past level 2 for the raid. If you do max it out, it will increase that slow to a second turn. But that could also be something you want to consider if you do want to use this team in the second chapter of the raid against a troll. If you're going to slow him down, you're going to be doing some big damage, and this team definitely has the ability to put some points on there as well. So it is something you might want to consider down the track, coming back and finishing this one off. Also important to note is that this one will put him under stealth, which means he cannot be marked. When he is under stealth, because he is faster, if you can keep the rest of the team alive, it just means that he's more likely going to be able to build up those extra points just by having those extra turns. On his second special ability, this is another one that you want to make sure you at least get up to level 3 so that you're going to gain stealth off this ability as well. Anytime that you can put him under stealth, this is where he really shines, so you want to make sure that you're doing that as much as possible. The other bonus for this particular ability here is it does bonus damage if any of his other allies have been killed. They do get killed off quite quickly in chapter 3, so there's every chance that that bonus is going to kick in quite early. Again, you're not going to see a lot of benefit in chapter 3 from any bonus damage here anyway, but it's always good to have this built up for other areas of the game, even other chapters of the raid. He is going to be able to deal so much damage that you want to be able to get as much out of him as possible. The other good thing is this is an AoE attack as well, so he could really start obliterating all of your enemies. If you are going to use him in the arena or somewhere like that, you could cut down teams quite quickly with this ability. So if you are going to be using Gondor anywhere outside of the raid, this is definitely something that you want to be putting those extra resources into if you can. For his passive ability though, this is something that could get you some bonus points very quickly in Chapter 3. Get this one up to level 5, because what's going to happen if Boromir dies, and he's most likely going to die before Faramir does. So once he dies, he's going to immediately get another turn. So that's going to allow you to put those bonus points on the board straight away as soon as Boromir dies. And if he's the first one that dies, you've got 4 other characters still in the team that are going to allow those points to build up quite quickly just by Boromir dying. So that's going to be an extra bonus way to get some sneaky points in for Chapter 3. Definitely level 5. You can always come back and do the level 6 upgrade if you are using him in other areas. Faramir is a very good character to have, and even if his abilities aren't going to be as effective in Chapter 3 of the raid, so if you do want to invest those resources into him, you're always going to get an advantage out of him at some point. The last ones that I'm going to speak about is Herendil and Sergeant Ara. Now, there's been a lot of talk from people saying not to use these in the team. You could sub somebody else in. Just remember that if you don't use a full team of Gondor, you're just going to reduce that block chance, which is the whole point of having this team in the raid to start with. If you don't use them and you can't max Denethor's leadership ability out, you're only going to have a 15% chance of block, which probably won't really net you very much results from them in Chapter 3 at all, unless you're incredibly lucky. So I would definitely put them in there to at least get that 25% block chance out of them. But there are other advantages to having them, and we're going to start with Sergeant Ara. She is actually a very good character, and the first thing that you're going to want to do is max out the passive ability here, because she's going to grant 1 stack of defensive to 3 random light allies, and of course Gondor are all light, so therefore that's 3 stacks straight away that you're going to have on your team. And defensive will guarantee that the next attack is blocked, which is going to be more points straight away for you, and she doesn't even have to do anything for that to happen. The other one that you're going to want to max out as soon as possible is the second special ability here, because once this is maxed out, it will grant defensive to the 2 most wounded Gondor allies. And the best thing about this, even though it's a long cooldown, you can use this from the first round. So the first ability that you're going to use for Sergeant Ara is going to be the second special. Along with that passive ability, you're just going to be heading out defensive to your team quite quickly, and they're all going to be getting you points very quickly at the start of the match, even if Denethor's ability isn't maxed out yet. For her first special ability, it's not going to do very much in Chapter 3 of the raid. However, in Chapter 2, you're going to have that turn meter reduction. When you get this to level 3, you're going to call a random ally to assist. So this is going to be something extra that could help you out in Chapter 1 of the raid, putting those extra stacks on the bomber. So definitely get this to at least level 3. If you find this team is quite effective in Chapter 2 of the raid, you're going to want to come back and max this out, because the more turn meter reduction that you can put on the troll, the better. Just allows you to get that damage a lot faster. For the basic ability, you can see here that she does gain counter attack off her basic ability. Now, she can't gain it if she is counter attacking, but she could gain it if she is assisting someone else, and we have seen some of those assist mechanics within this team. So it's definitely something you could add to this overall team. Again, not going to work too well in Chapter 3, but in other areas of the game, you're going to want to come back and put more damage into this one if you can. Once you max this out, she will always gain counterattack from using this one. So this could be very effective in places like the arena. Last but not least, we've got Herendil. Now, he is still pretty fast. Not as fast as Faramir, so he won't take his turn before the orcs, but he will be in the mix there as well. So you're going to be able to put another 18k on the board free of charge without having to do anything there. In terms of his abilities though, his passive ability, you want to get this up to level 5 as quick as you possibly can, because he's going to gain turn meter every time a Gondor ally dies. So for chapter 3, as we know, you score points just by taking a turn, so the more turns that he's going to get, the better. More points on the board without even trying. You don't really need to max this one out. If at some stage you really like this team, you want to increase that might duration, it's up to you, but it's a very expensive upgrade to do. So I'll leave that one up to you if you really want to come back and do that. For his second special ability here, this is a big AoE and it does inflict enfeeble. Once you get that up to level 4, it will always inflict enfeeble, which does lower their crit chance by 30%, meaning that you're going to take less damage. But as a bonus, if this AoE does take out one of the enemies, it gets to fire off again. So if you've got a lot of these enemies on fairly low health, you could potentially start taking them all out pretty quickly, which is going to reduce those stacks of captured on your team, which is going to be very helpful in the survival of the team. Getting this to at least level 5 is going to reduce the cooldown to 3 turns, but there are 2 places where I see this being even more effective. The first one is going to be in chapter 1 of the raid, where you score points for taking out multiple enemies at once. The other is going to be in the arena, where if you can get some of those other characters lower on health, especially if they're elves, like you can take a couple of those stacks off Elrond of Unbreakable. You might even be able to take him out with something like this. So this could be a team that you might want to consider for the arena, but definitely take this to level 5. You can always come back and get the extra damage off level 6 later once you've got those extra resources to spend. For his first special ability, this is not one that's really going to benefit you very much in the raid at all. However, if you are using him in the arena, this one specifically targets characters that have nimble, and it can really pack a punch. So if you're going up against elves, this can really destroy them quite quickly. So even at level 4, this gets reduced down to a stamina of 2. So every second turn, you can start firing this off at the elves. It's going to be very effective there. If you want to use them in the arena, invest in this one, definitely at least to level 4. For the raid, you can probably skip it if you're not really going to use this team anywhere else. On his basic ability, this is all damage. Nothing special about this one. He is a decent damage dealer, so getting this up to 220% damage would be great if you're using him anywhere except for the raid. If you're going to use this team in chapter 2 of the raid, if you find they're effective there, obviously building up more damage on the basic ability is going to help you out. Other than that, you can pick and choose how much you're going to put into this particular ability. So just to sum everything up with Gondor, I'm not 100% sold on this team. It is going to be a while before you can farm them all up to 7 stars, when you're really going to see a lot more come out of them, because they're going to have a much bigger health pool to draw from. Therefore, they're going to survive a lot longer. They're going to do more damage, all that kind of thing. For the time being, you're going to have to pour a lot into their gear and their level just to get them to survive those extra few rounds. But the biggest drawback is going to be on Denethor's leadership ability if you don't have access to those green ability materials, because the whole point of this team is that block chance to help you get those extra points really quickly. Those last 2 levels give you that extra 5%, meaning you'll have 50% rather than 25% chance of blocking. I really don't know if this is something I would advise free-to-play players to start investing in. However, it's completely up to you. I just want you guys to understand exactly what you have to put into this team if you're going to get them to work properly. Hopefully this is some food for thought for you guys, but that's it for this one. Don't forget, like and sub, you know the deal. We got plenty more Heroes of Middle-earth coming your way. Don't miss out, and we'll catch you in the next one.